Welcome to Straight to the Point. I'm your host, Representative Joe Diorsi. In a world of long-windedness, I'm here to deliver you the Capitol News in 10 minutes or less. So, let's get straight to the point. So this is the Straight to the Point podcast. This is Representative Joe Diorsi, and I have a special guest in studio today, Paula Scanlan, a women's sports advocate. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
So what brings you to the capital of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the area because I have a speech at Gettysburg College tonight, but we figured it was a good opportunity to come by. We thought there might be a hearing for a women's sports bill, which seems to maybe not be happening now, but regardless, we're just here to advocate for this women's sports and encourage legislators to sign protecting women's sports into action, and I think that's really important, especially in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 9 was to be voted on this week, but I guess it's been postponed. That is a Kristen Phillips-Hill and Dawn Kiefer bill. In the House, headed by one of my favorites, I call her the hardest working representative in the PA State House, Barb Gleim. It's House Bill 158, and it basically, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, limits girls' sports to biological women.
Yep. And she tried to pass this back in 2022 now, I think, with no luck to having passed it yet. And it's really sad that we're in this position, especially with everything that's happened. Obviously, I went to college here in Pennsylvania, and there was a man on my women's swim team. And people are still not willing to sign this into legislation. I mean, we have a sitting governor in this state that has continued to say he doesn't want to sign something like this. When he was Attorney General, he believed that men belonged on women's sports teams. Mm-hmm. And so that's unfortunately what we're fighting against here in the state of Pennsylvania. Yeah,
so in 2022, then Governor Tom Wolf vetoed Representative Gleim's bill. And like you said, Paula, it seems like the same mindset is with our current governor, Josh Shapiro. So why is, I'm a former athlete myself, I have a 7-year-old girl. Why is it so controversial? Like, why are we talking about this in the studio? Why are there prominent people in the Democratic Party fighting against fairness in girls' sports?
I wish I had a good answer for you. I honestly really don't know. I don't know why this is a problem. I don't know why we're having this conversation. I mean, I think even Democrats, voters, not politicians, but people who vote Democrat, don't even agree with this issue. I mean, I've heard from people that disagree with me on everything else I believe, but agree with me on this issue. And yeah, we have, politicians out in Washington, D.C. or here in the state capitol that don't vote the way that their voters want them to. And this issue, I think if we really talk to all the American people about this would be done in a second, because it really is an 80-20 issue.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would imagine the polling shows it's either a 70-30 or 80-20 thing, yet there's people towing, I want to say the party line, but it's not really a party line. Have you changed anybody's mind on this topic as you've traveled the country? And I want to get to your story in a little bit more detail, but is it something that you're able to change minds?
I mean, definitely. I mean, this past election in 2024, I heard from so many different people that told me that they were going to be voting for Republicans strictly because of this issue alone. And so I think that's really telling, especially since 2020, this was no part of the conversation and why people vote the way that they do. So I definitely think a lot of minds were changed. I know a lot of people that were really upset with the Democrats for this issue in particular. And it's just been interesting to see them continue to stand by this and continue to say that they stand for men and women's sports and all this other madness.
Mm-hmm. So I've had Riley Gaines on the show, and we've talked about just her experience at NCAA's, but you arguably were closer to this issue. Can you take us back in time, talk about the Penn swimming team, how this whole thing with Thomas arose and your experience there?
Yeah, we first found out he was going to be joining our team actually back in 2019. So this was something I dealt with for 3 years, actually. And he decided, literally announced to us that he identified as a woman and wanted to join the women's sports team. And then 2 years later, because there was a gap year because of COVID, he was eventually a part of the women's team. And in that, he had a locker room like everyone else. He was just part of the team, and we were told to accept it. When we tried to raise concerns about him being in our locker room or being on our team, they brought in a panel of administrators, and they told us that we were bigoted and hateful if we objected to it. They told us that they actually compared it to not wanting to undress with someone based on their race in the 1960s. So they called us racist, essentially, for not wanting to undress in front of a fully grown, fully intact man. And the last thing that they told us was if they said, if you continue to object to this, here is the number for psychological services. Please make an appointment because you need help and you need to seek therapy. So time and time again, it was just, we're continually reminded that this male athlete's feelings mattered more than our own. And the university did nothing to protect its female athletes. And they also went on and nominated him for NCAA Woman of the Year. So that was, showed that they stood by their decision to allow him to compete. It wasn't just that they, thought they had to because of the rules. It was that they really stood by what they were doing.
These comments, because I actually hadn't heard the comparison to race, which is like that's mind-boggling. I'm like processing that right now. Where obviously this is like academia. We know that that's the breeding ground for a lot of these radical, frankly Marxist thoughts. But where do these notions come from? Is it aimed at just the destruction of women? Are these like Marxist ideals? Like you're a graduate of an Ivy League school. Like I'm not actually surprised that it started there. Where are these notions coming from, and what's their goal?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is some aspect of cultural Marxism, as they say, to all of this. I think that their end goal is to just disrupt society, to really just flip everything on its head, cause chaos. I mean, this wasn't just on my swim team. I think even before any of this happened, there were, trends of trying to make people introduce themselves with pronouns. There were instances where in classes you would lose points if you didn't refer to hypothetical people in the math problems with the correct pronouns. I mean, I took a engineering ethics class and they taught us that algorithms were racist if a black person didn't review the code. There were things like that all ingrained in my entire college. I mean, I had a professor refer to 9/11 as a cultural misunderstanding. I mean, it's more like, what class did I take that there wasn't some weird trend of some forced liberal ideology on you? I can't even name one. And I studied engineering. And so people will often say, oh, well, you missed out on these humanities courses. It was still everywhere in the engineering school. Every class that you took, you were reminded of, somebody's racist, somebody's a victim, somebody's being hurt by white people. I mean, it was just everywhere. And these college campuses are really the starting point for a lot of this. And honestly, if we don't get into the college campuses and really look at what's going on here, I think that's how you lose a lot of the young people. And I know a lot of the young people have really gotten themselves out of it and have turned out and have common sense now. But it's definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah, two trends that I like to point to about Gen Z, which is your generation, is less are going to college, which that can be celebrated, and more are moving to the South because things just tend to be simpler and you don't have your Northeastern Ivy Leagues. Last term, just as a sidebar, I wrote an op-ed in response to the dean of a college here in South Central Pennsylvania, who made the claim at a Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration that Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist.
What was he then?
Well, yeah, he certainly was, and I had the primary documents to prove it. But that is what we're dealing with. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's great colleges out there. I love my alma mater, but in the realm of free speech and actually teaching students to critically think rather than what to believe that's a major issue. So lightning round here. Obviously, we have the PIAA rules change in Pennsylvania, which is a big deal. And just to repeat, Senate Bill 9, which is to be considered soon in the Senate. It was postponed, but they'll be considering it soon. And House Bill 158, which is Representative Gleim. If you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I agree with Paula and Joe. We need to protect our daughters and our girls. Phone your representative and let him know that you want this bill to be called up. Phone the governor's office and tell him this is common sense. But lightning round here, you're headed to Gettysburg here this week and then up to Madison, Wisconsin. What do you got going on there?
Just giving campus speeches, talking to students, encouraging the students that do agree with me that it's important to use their voices. I think that's the biggest thing that I saw is there was a lot of people who agreed with me. There's not a lot of people who are willing to say that out loud. And to what I say to everyone, honestly, if you believe something and you're staying quiet, you're part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So it's time to speak up and say what we believe, and that's how we get out of this. That's how we fight against this craziness with the 80-20 issue that we're talking about right now, where how come we can't get this across the finish line? It's because there's so many people that know that it's wrong, Democrats included, that won't vote on it. Use your courage, use your strength, and vote and stand up for what you believe in. Yeah, definitely. So if there's listeners that want to see what you're doing and follow you, where would you direct them? Yeah, I'm pretty active on X. You can follow me at Paula Scanlan. Just talking about this issue, talking about a bunch of other things. Just trying my best to support young girls who are going through this and do the right thing and standing up for what I believe in. Yep. So she is Paula Scanlan. She is a courageous leader in the Save Women's Sports arena. Paula, thanks for joining Straight to the Point. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.